Hello and welcome back to Puck on the Parkway. It is an interesting, an arguably devastating time to be part of the New Jersey Devils faithful. We're going to chop everything up. Um, that's gone on in the in the month of March 2024. I'm James Burley alongside Daniel Rebane as always. And boy, oh boy, have we got a lot to get into. Lindy Ruff is out. They heard your calls, fans. They heard the chants, and they have finally obliged. It's a new era in New Jersey. The Lindy Ruff era is over. It's no longer about developing the young stars. It's about winning, being a winning team. And that's something the New Jersey Devils haven't been right now, sitting seventh place in the Metropolitan Division, a healthy 8 points out of third place, and a healthy 8 points out of the wild card. So things are looking pretty bleak in the Garden State right now. But let's try to cheer things up for a moment with some introductions. Dan, how are you doing, my friend?
I'm doing the best I can, man. This season has just really fallen apart. Every time the Devils come on, I always joke with my parents. I'm like, "Here we go again, guys. Are we gonna watch this together, or am I gonna just be watching this by myself?" And we're at the point where I'm watching it by myself because we can't stand each other when they go down 1-0. So,
Yep.
I mean, we could just get right into it with the Lindy stuff. I think it was a long time coming. I would have probably made a move earlier in the season just to kind of right the ship quicker. Because now
Right.
doing it, you've only got 21 games, now 20 games left in the season. I mean, there's not much room for error now. Like you can lose a handful of games, but you have to have a serious winning streak going into the end of this year. So I don't know what your feelings are on about it, but obviously it had to happen, but is it a little too late?
I agree in the sense that it's too late for 2024, you know? If they had decided to see it out for the rest of the season with Lindy Ruff at the helm, then I think it wouldn't be much different than bringing in Travis Green, who's now the interim head coach, former assistant. Uh, I don't see how they're going to be able to fix this in 20 games. I agree with you there. I think they've dug themselves too deep of a hole to be in contention for a playoff spot in this tough of an NHL, and this tough of an Eastern Conference, and this tough of a Metropolitan Division. That's that. And
Yeah.
especially when you look at the games that they play in the next 15 days. They got the Blues at home tomorrow night, then the Hurricanes on Saturday. Hopefully, I will be there. The Rangers on Monday at the Garden, on the road to Dallas, on the road to Vegas, hosting the Penguins, who are now ahead of them in the standings, and hosting the Winnipeg Jets, who are not exactly the same juggernaut they were for most of the season, but are still firmly ahead of the Devils in terms of their stature at the moment. So I guess let's start there, actually. What would it take in these next 20 games for this decision to bring Travis Green to look like it was made at the right time? Because I'm with you in the camp that it's too little too late for 2023-24.
I mean, they would need to win like maybe 15 games. It's really like because you have to jump all those teams that you talked about. First of all, not just getting the 8 points, like making the 8 points up, but you have to leapfrog all the teams in front of us. Like we're in seventh place right now, so we have like a couple of teams that we already have to get above, and the Islanders are playing better. Obviously, Pittsburgh hasn't been playing the best, but they still have games in hand on us. So it's tough. You have to win. I mean, like 75, 80% of these games the rest of the way. And it's going to be a tough task because, like, you bring it up with the schedule. Like, I'm looking at this March schedule. There might be like 2 or 3 wins in the month of March for the Devils. Like, that's how tough the schedule is down the road. And I don't know if they can somehow magically pull off 15 wins, 16 wins, something like that, then maybe they have a chance of getting into the playoffs. But even then, man, I don't know. It's such a deep hole they've dug themselves.
And last year, I hate, and I keep doing it a lot, hate comparing this year to last year. It's a different team. But 15 wins out of 20 didn't seem like that insurmountable of an achievement
Not at
just a
all.
year ago. They were stringing together wins. You turned on the TV and you saw the Devils playing, and you thought, we're going to win this game. It doesn't matter the opponent. It's the Devils. They're good. They're probably going to win this game. And this year, it's been the exact opposite. You turn on the TV and you're dreading the moment that the other team scores that first goal because you know it's coming. It's happened, I think, what, 42
40, I think
times?
it's 45. I think we're up to 45.
45. Jesus H Christ.
Yeah.
Well, that is just that. See, for me, that's where I kind of draw the line between, well, is it just injuries or is it a pattern of unsuccessful playing? And to me, it's absolutely a pattern. If you play this long, this badly for this long, this inconsistently for this long, you have to start looking at who's making the decisions and what's happening collectively. And I think Lindy Ruff probably got too long of a leash this year. That's just
Definitely.
me, but I'm I know a lot of people agree with that. I still think, and this is an important thing to say, Lindy Ruff is obviously a good coach who knows what he's doing. There's a reason that
Mhm.
he's been around the league for this long. There's a reason he's fourth all time in wins. He's won over 800 games as a coach. None of those things are coincidences, and he was never a bad coach in New Jersey. He just
No.
maybe made some mistakes that were further compounded by injuries. Then the circumstances were bad, and he didn't deal with things well enough. And job is based on performance, and his performance was subpar. With that said, though, let's take a look and peel it back to the summer. And I'm guilty of this as well as Tom Fitzgerald, the general manager of the Devils, but I don't think he prepared this team well enough for 2023-24. Did he prepare them enough for 2, 3 years down the line? That remains to be seen, but I would still argue that yes, he has. This team has so much young talent and has clearly banked on that young talent, which is generally the way that you go about this business. But when you look at what they did last year, 112 points, 52 wins, franchise records, and then to come back and lay this bad of an egg the year after, it makes you seem like you were playing with too much of your house money and you got caught. Losing Damon Severson and Ryan Graves was probably the right course of action for this team. Look at the contracts they have in
I,
Columbus and Pittsburgh, respectively. Those aren't contracts you want to be paying to defensemen that age. Certainly not for 8 years, like in Damon Severson's case. But there was always going to be a learning curve, and everybody expected that. And everybody also was saying Vitek Vanacek is not an elite goaltender, but he's good enough where, in conjunction with a guy like Akira Schmid, who had a very good 2022-23, not just including the playoffs, that would be enough of a foundation to keep this team above the playoff line. Maybe not as good as they were, but above the playoff line. And you hope that some forwards take another jump too, and you have a full season now of Tyler Toffoli and Timo Meier to bolster the scoring. Then you think this team's going to be really, really good, and they weren't. And I think myself, I was too naive, putting a lot of faith into Vitek Vanacek. I don't know if you remember my preseason prediction for
bold
him was that he
prediction.
would become a top 10 goalie in the league. That was pretty contingent on the Devils being good in front of him, and neither of those things were true. So I have to say that this season's blame for me, it more falls on Tom Fitzgerald than it does on Lindy Ruff. And I'm curious if you think the same way.
Yeah, I'd say there's more blame than probably I would have thought coming into this trade deadline, like this portion of the season.
Mm-hmm.
Obviously, when we were talking preseason, obviously all the rumors were Connor Hellebuyck to the Devils, and I think Fitzy thought that he could get that deal done. I really do, and obviously those talks broke down, and Connor Hellebuyck resigns in Winnipeg, and we all see what he's doing now. We obviously know if the Devils got Connor Hellebuyck, this season would be completely different. Obviously, he didn't get it done, and there was no plan B. His plan B was to run VTech back out there, and obviously that has come back and hit the Devils in the worst way. Everything that could have gone wrong this season has gone wrong. John Marino and Jonas Siegenthaler regressions, Vitek Vanacek regression, Schmid regression, injuries, bad coaching. Everything has hit this Devils team in the wrong way. And yeah, a lot of blame could be on Fitz, a lot of blame on the players for not playing up to their standards. Uh, a lot of blame on Lindy as well for not getting his team ready for games. Like there's a lot of blame to go around. That's what happens when you come off a season like last year into a season like this year and you just have no success.
Well, I think that's pretty accurate. I think we're in agreement there for the most part, and I think most of the fans probably would say a lot of the same things. But what it is now is that Travis Green is going to be the coach for the next 20 games, the final 21 games of this season, and
Mm.
potentially playoffs should the Devils make it. But I have my serious doubts about all that. Obviously, former player in the NHL, played almost 1,000 games for different teams, including the Islanders, Ducks, I believe the Bruins and Leafs as well. Coached for several seasons in Vancouver. Um, it was his time was mostly obstructed by COVID, I believe. So he had two COVID seasons, so not two full seasons in there. But also coached a little bit before then, and he never really had a good team in Vancouver to work with.
Not really.
They did make the playoffs, I believe, during the bubble year. But other than that, no. And he's also coached in the AHL and the Western Hockey League. So he's got experience with both young guys and at the NHL level. And a fun fact is he's the now first coach at the NHL level to coach all three Hughes brothers, having done it with Quinn in Vancouver and now with Luke and Jack in New Jersey. What can we expect from Travis Green? Well, we can expect someone who's got experience at this level before. And from what we saw last night in their 5-3 loss to Florida, there was at least a lot of fight in that game. It wasn't perfect. They didn't play poorly, though. It was good hockey. They lost to a better team who was desperate after having just lost to the Rangers the night before. Um, and I don't want to hold that one against him. Kira Schmid did let in a couple of soft ones, if you ask me. It wasn't a perfect game from the Swiss netminder. But Travis Green, I don't know if he's going to be a long-term answer. He could be. I think his name will be in the ring with several other names, but he's not the only coach out there who's made a name for himself in recent memory who's going to be available. There's plenty. There's plenty of coaches that were fired both this year and in recent memory. Jay Woodcroft and Lane Lambert come to mind. Specifically, I'm not sure if the Devils would even consider either of those guys. I'd have my opinions on if they did, but Travis Green is going to be behind the Devils bench as the head coach figure for the foreseeable future and potentially into next year, although I have my doubts if he'll be continued. So that's just a little bit about the new Devils coaches. There's anything you know about him that you want to add on, Daniel?
I know he has a relationship with Fitz because they played together on the
Mm-hmm.
island. So maybe that could come into factor coming into this offseason. But again, I mean, it's up to Travis Green. If he could get this team into the playoffs, then that kind of bolsters his resume. Um, but yeah, it's gonna be tough for him to see what he can do in these last 20 games. We already saw last game. They played better. I'd say that they played better than what they were on the California trip, but
Mm-hmm.
again, they just don't get the result. They lose. But yeah, we'll see what he can what he can do.
Yeah, and he's got a tough task in front of him with the teams that they've got lined up over these next 2 weeks, especially and into April. It just does not get easy for these Devils, and they're going to be facing a lot of teams that are not only perhaps better than them and in playoff spaces, but are going to be in playoff races, arguably more so than New Jersey now. They got the Islanders coming up at the end of the month. Toronto, who, as good as they are, they've only got a foot in the door for the playoffs right now. They're going to be playing with everything, so it's not going to get much easier. But let's take a look specifically at some of his roster decisions from that first game. I think more notably than anything was the um, exclusion of Seaman Nemec as one of the defense. He was a healthy scratch, and the uh, the soundbite that Travis Green gave at media availability, I thought was pretty powerful in terms of why a player like Nemec would be um, scratched after having seemingly such a smooth transition from the AHL to the NHL that he's been good enough to be a top pairing or top four D man for this team, especially with the injuries. For him to be healthy scratched was a head scratcher for me until I read what he said. And I have to say, I really appreciated the sentiment that, Seaman Nemec is a terrific player and he's going to have a long and very good career, especially with this hockey club. But there are things in his game that they want to refine. And I really appreciate that a coach has the willingness to take out a young star player such as Seaman Nemec and really make a statement about the way you want him to play, some things that you want him to develop in his game. And that's all great. I love all that. But then I look at the roster the Devils have, and I see that there's another rookie defenseman who probably could have benefited more from being a healthy scratch and having more things added to his game, and certainly is less of a well-rounded defender than Seaman Nemec, and that's Luke Hughes. So I think it was a big move, big first move, especially from Travis Green in terms of the roster. Again, I appreciate the sentiment and what they're trying to do. This is something that wasn't uncommon under Lindy Ruff, really, in terms of healthy scratching Alex Holtz, keeping Holtz on bottom six limited minutes. Same thing with Jesper Bratt in his earlier years of development, keeping him out of the top six for his own benefit of becoming a 200-foot player. And we've seen that come to fruition with Bratt, where he's plays on all types of special teams, power play, penalty kill, and is great in the neutral zone. But it just seemed like the wrong player at the wrong time for this. And while I do think that there's value in it, absolutely there's value in it. It just seemed like the wrong choice for this team, and it sent the wrong message to the fans that this new era, this 21 games under Travis Green is going to be any different from 61 games under Lindy Ruff.
Yeah, you brought it up. Like wrong player, wrong time. Like obviously him sitting for a game, maybe two, could help him in the long run. But we need to win games. And to be fair, personally for me, since he's come up, Nemec has been our best defender. Like
Mm-hmm.
obviously we see a lot of defensive breakdowns and all that. But I've seen him maybe commit a couple here and there, but he's not the one making the mistakes all game. Luke Hughes is making way more mistakes. And it's not even let's not even pick on rookies. What about the veteran guys that should be defensively stable, like Siegenthaler, John Marino, Brendan Smith? They're making mistakes constantly and have not been able to fix those said mistakes. But we're gonna look at Simon Nemec because he's a rookie and give him a game off when he's been way better than all those guys that I said this season. I understand the message, but I mean we need to win games, and you keeping out our best defenseman. I don't know. I don't know what to think of it. Maybe they're like, you know what? Maybe help setting him out of a game, and that would help him in the long run more than him playing and us winning this game. But I mean, I don't know. I just didn't like the message, especially after firing Lindy. Like, imagine just like you're like, oh yes, we're gonna free up all these rookies. We're gonna give them the time they actually deserve. Alexander Holtz is gonna get like top 9 minutes, still on the fourth line. Oh, Seaman Nemec is a healthy scratch. That's just I don't know. It's a little weird. Maybe it pays off for them, but I don't know. You brought up some great points, and yeah, we'll see if he's back in the lineup today when this podcast comes out.
Yeah, and in a similar sense, I want to talk about Tom Fitzgerald's comments on Alex Holtz. I'm sure you saw this. I'm sorry I didn't mention it before we started, but I am going to add it in now.
Mixed comments, by the way. Like
In mixed comments, but I like a lot of what Fitzgerald's saying in the same sense that I appreciate Travis Green being willing to scratch a player like Seaman Nemec. I think it's the wrong time and the wrong player, but again, I still think there's value there. And you said it yourself. In the long run, this could be really beneficial. I'm just going to read out the whole quote. When asked about Alex Holtz, Tom Fitzgerald answered, thusly, I would say if he changes as a player, then it will change his ice time. He has not had a good year. I don't believe it's because he's on the fourth line. Core values you have as a player, strong on walls, puck play, puck management. Are you turning pucks over? It's not about the goals. It's the other areas. It's the game within the game that matters. Managing the lines, turnovers. Those areas have to be way better, and not just for him, but for a lot of individuals. Will it change here? He'll get an opportunity to show that he's reliable enough to be out on the ice in certain times. We all know he can shoot the puck. We all know that he has great potential to be a goal scorer. And we're not losing games because we're not scoring goals. We're losing games because we don't manage pucks well enough. And there's a lot in that. There's a lot that we could unpack. I'm going to start at the end. We're losing games because we don't manage pucks well enough. I think that's largely true.
that is
Um,
facts. Yes.
and I do think Alex Holtz has contributed to that. I don't think he's a perfect 200-foot player. But again, how do you know it's not because he's playing on the fourth line when you've only played him there, right? When you
That's
only
my
get eight
biggest
minutes a
problem.
game,
Yeah.
13 goals in 8 minutes a game, that's impressive, but I think you have to challenge him more by giving him more responsibility. He kind of has to learn by learning, right? Not so much as being learned by being told. I think I see Jack Hughes make more mistakes that lead to goals than
Oh,
Alex Holtz does. And I'm not saying Jack Hughes needs less ice time or that he's a bad hockey player. He takes a lot of risks. That's his game. He's going
yeah.
to drive at open space on the ice. He's going to try to drive when there's not open space on the ice. That's how he becomes a successful player. That's how he creates chances. Holtz is a little bit different where he likes to find space and then get the puck to rip it. And that can be, damaging because he's not covering gaps. He's not in the right space. He doesn't win puck battles. He's not fighting for every loose puck. But there's a reason why players have strengths and weaknesses. And to me, while I do agree that there's a lot for Alex Holtz to learn before he becomes a full-fledged player, and I'm gonna go back to Jesper Bratt. I think there's a pretty similar balance here between those guys. Jesper Bratt, I don't think was as much of a liability defensively as Alex Holtz can be, but I think once they trusted Jesper Bratt to be that goal scorer was really when he flourished. And I think if you give Holtz that freedom, then I think maybe you could see him start to make some adjustments the other way. I know that will be a bit of a learning curve. It's going to be ugly, but how could it be much uglier than what this season's been already?
Yeah, like these comments that he made. Do you have the other one where he was talking about sitting? It's not like he can't really learn if he sits on the bench the whole time. You have that the other quote?
I can pull that one up.
But yeah, I'll keep going until you find it. But I mean, we all know Alexander Holtz's game. Last year, he was hit and miss a lot of times. Coming into this year, playing a lot of the games, I've seen much improvement over his skating ability, his work ethic on the ice, his ability in the corners. Like he is really trying. Obviously, he still makes mistakes, and that's what a 22-year-old is going to do. At a certain point, there's so much a player can do of his talent and his age where his confidence is just gonna sink. Like you're just burying this kid on the fourth line. Every mistake he makes is benchable. He's playing 8 minutes a night, even if he scores a goal. Like where's this kid getting confidence from? It's definitely not from his coach. His GM is now bashing him. I mean, I imagine yourself in Alexander Holtz's shoes. I think he still leads this team in 5-on-5 goals, and he's still buried on the fourth line playing with Curtis McDermott and Chris Tierney. Like, I mean, yes, you want him to be more of a 200-foot player, but you knew what you were getting when you drafted him in 2021. I believe that was his draft, right? 2021. Yeah,
2020
2021.
maybe?
Yeah, 2020, 2021. One of those drafts. You knew what you were getting out of him. So why are you trying to make him more of a player he's not than he is? He's a goal scorer. Let him go score goals. Yes, you're gonna have defensive liabilities here and there. Look at Tyler Toffoli. Tyler Toffoli's a defensive liability, and he's fine. He could go play with Jack Hughes or Nico Hischier on a nightly basis because he's 32. I don't know. I just feel like you got to give Holtz more of a runway. Let him flourish. Let him go fly. Put him on a line with Jack Hughes for more than 2 minutes. I mean, what happens? He scores a goal and then he gets benched. That's what happened under Lindy Ruff. Obviously, that was because he made a turnover the period before, but like I think I've just been repeating myself this whole time. It's just a confidence thing at this point in time. Like you're just crushing this kid's confidence.
Well, I
Sometimes you just gotta let a kid make mistakes and he'll eventually learn.
well, speaking of, that could not have been a better segue. I did find that quote that Fitzgerald had. It wasn't specifically about Alex Holtz or Lindy Ruff, but you can read between the lines. Quote, accountability isn't always taking a kid and sitting his ass on the bench. Now, that is definitely directed at the coach, saying he wasn't being accountable enough by just making these certain roster decisions that he made. And I think that Tom Fitzgerald maybe expressed some disagreement with the way that Holtz has been treated or used throughout this year to make it to put it another way. And I'm curious what you make of that quote. Did you read it into it the same way that I do? And do you think that maybe this is going to change the way that Alex Holtz is used by this team? Because I don't know if I see it changing within the next 21 games that he's going to start seeing consistent 14, 15 minutes a game. I have my doubts again about that.
Oh, that quote was definitely about Alexander Holtz. I can tell you who else is who what other kid has been really benched this year? I mean, that was definitely about Alexander Holtz. Will we expect change? Maybe now if he starts playing better, he'll get more leeway. Maybe he gets bumped up to the third line because like still Curtis Lazar's playing on third line. We love Curtis Lazar, but
Beast.
in a better world, he's a fourth liner. He's a great fourth liner. So I don't know. We'll see. Travis Green has a lot to work with. We'll see. Maybe hopefully Holtz gets some more time in the future. Again, perfect world for me. He's on that first power play unit on the left circle. Let him take some one timers. We've been
It could use
missing
a right
Doug.
shot too.
They've been missing Dougie Hamilton's shot on the power play, and nobody wants to shoot the puck on the power play. You give the puck to Alexander Holtz, he's going to shoot that. He's going to shoot 5 times a power play. So
And look, I mean, just about having a right shot at the power play. Give me more Colin Miller on the power play. The dude's got a cannon.
yeah,
Get a body in
he's
front of
got
the
the
net
hardest shot this season.
out of any active player in the NHL. Get a body in front of the net and let that guy wail, man. I don't know why we haven't done more of that, but I mean that it is what it is.
Actually,
Let's
I
move
wanted
on,
to. Let me just bring up one more point. We
please.
talk about the Nemec and Holtz and stuff. I think we put too much on Luke Hughes' plate. I know earlier, like in the middle of the season, there was points where he was getting like 25 minutes a night. Like we gotta remember, this kid's a rookie coming out of Michigan playing 35 games a season, and now he's running first power play unit. He's playing top 4 minutes. At a certain point, you gotta bring him back a little bit. Maybe he was the perfect guy to be like, you know what, you should go take a day or two off, go up in the press box, watch the game from up there, and then come back rejuvenated. Maybe we'll see that because obviously they have a couple of defensemen extra, but yeah, I think we should give Luke less responsibility so he could do more with the responsibility that he has. You know what I'm saying?
I could not agree more with that sentiment. And I think like even if it weren't for the fact that he's playing coming straight out of college, playing 35 games a year normally, I mean, there was too much put on his plate from the get-go. Even when Dougie
Yeah.
Hamilton was healthy, even when Jonas Siegenthaler wasn't underperforming.
Mm.
If the expectations were perhaps a bit too high on some of these blue liners,
Yep.
especially Luke Hughes. And while we say all that, he hasn't had a bad year. He's had a
No,
lot
not at
of
all.
mistakes and
Yeah.
has shown plenty times that he's not a finished product. And he was
That he's
never
still
supposed to
20.
be.
That he's still
Exactly.
20.
He is the guy's my age. Yeah. Like he's not he was never meant to be a finished product, but the way that Tom Fitzgerald set this team up to enter the year, it would
Yep.
appear that they believed that was already the case, that he was a finished product. And look, the memo of giving the kids the keys and letting them run the team made sense 2, 3 years ago when they were still up and coming together. When we didn't know if Nico Hischier was fully that two-way forward that you could count on in any scenario. We didn't know if Jack Hughes was going to be a top 10 player in the NHL yet. Those things are true, and they've come to fruition. But now to have those guys playing at the top of their game, top of the league, and then have guys like Luke Hughes come in and, bring back some of that old fashioned mentality. It started to look like the old Devils again. And
Yeah.
that's not me saying that Jack Hughes has regressed or anything. He's still above a point per game and leads the team in points after having missed a good portion of this season. It's me saying, well, look, this team did not cultivate themselves the same identity that they had last year. And they came in a little bit uncertain about certain positions. And It bit them in the behind super quickly, and they never figured it out. And it took 2/3, 3/4 of the season for them to fire the coach. And I'm certainly of the sentiment that when the team is good, the coach gets too much credit, and when the team is bad, the coach gets too much hate. I've always believed that about every sport, and I don't. You're never going to change my mind on that. I do think that there is a time and place to praise and to criticize coaches for sure, but I think they're under the microscope perhaps a little bit too much, especially from fans of their own teams. But with that said, the Devils had patterns of being terrible for most of this season, and they didn't try to address those problems until 3 days ago. So that's where they are now. That is the case. That is everything that we've got in terms of how they've played, how they set up, and where they're at right now.
Yep.
The fact of the matter is, this Friday is the trade deadline. And should the Devils pursue a playoff push this year, I think it would be a waste, personally. There is a chance that they could make some moves. And now there's also a chance that they could make moves the other way and start selling if they want to, look forward to building for 2024-25. The
Yep.
names at the top of that list in terms of players that they could ship out if they want to sell is obviously Tyler Toffoli. If there's players they want to buy that they could ship out, Alex Holtz, Dawson Mercer, those are some of your more quote unquote expendable guys to be able to bring something in. And obviously, as it has been the entire year, goaltenders are at the top of the list of players to bring in. And most recently, it's been Jacob Markstrom of the Calgary Flames. And yeah, I mean, you're a little more fine-tuned to the whole trade thing and the contracts and all that. That's your jam more so than it is mine.
Yeah.
I'm going to let you take the lead on this. What direction should the Devils take? I don't think they should be buyers. If they are buyers, then it should be with next year in mind.
Yep.
But I don't think they should be massive sellers either, because Tyler Toffoli, I think there's something to be said about the value he brings to the team, and could he be re-signed? It seems the Devils want him in New Jersey. So, Dan, take it away. What direction they going in, and which players should we expect to come into New Jersey or to go out?
All right, so there's a lot. There's a lot in here. We'll start with the goalie first. I think if we were to be quote unquote buyers, there's only one thing to do, and that would to be trade for a goalie. Now the question is, are you going to be able to get the goalie you want? Because now there's rumors out there that Tom Fitzgerald has locked in, loaded, nobody else. He wants Jacob Markstrom. And then on the Calgary side, they said, we're in a playoff race. We're close. We've been winning games. We're not trading Jacob Markstrom anymore. And this whole saga kind of went up in the air a month ago. Remember those rumors a month ago? Jacob Markstrom's going to be a Devil, right?
It
Trade.
was when he was
They had
playing
a trade.
against the
Yep.
Rangers.
When they came to the East Coast, comes out the Devils and Calgary had a trade agreed upon. Everything was agreed upon. And when Calgary went to go get it approved by ownership, they nixed it in the butt. For there's different reasons out there, but the latest one is that they were winning and they wanted to come back in the summer because they wanted to make a run into the postseason. So I mean, Tom Fitzgerald's going to get hate for not bringing the goalie in, but again, another example of he almost had the goalie. It just fell through because the other team didn't want to trade their goalie to us. And you know what? You need two people to tango. So it's tough. It's tough as a Devils fan because I mean, if we got Jacob Markstrom a month ago, I think we're in a way different position than we are right now. Lindy Ruff still the coach. We're probably in a playoff position if we're being fair. So that's on the buying side. The latest rumor also is that they might be interested in Linus Olmark from Boston because Boston obviously has Swayman, and they're going to re-sign him because he's an RFA, and they're eventually going to have to try to trade him to get some assets. What are your opinions on Linus Olmark?
Well, let me say something quickly about Markstrom before I go to Allmark.
Yep.
The Calgary Flames have 65 points in 61 games.
Yep.
The New Jersey Devils have 64 points in 62 games. So while we're talking about the Devils who haven't fully decided if they're buyers or sellers, the Calgary Flames have kind of phoned in this season at this point, right? They're not going to make the playoffs. They know it. They've accepted it 4 months, and the Devils are only just coming to that realization. I don't know if that's a deal that they can explore now, just because they've fallen so deeply to the wayside, and Markstrom has clearly made it public now how he doesn't like the whole trade discussions going on and just the
Yeah,
way
this
it's
whole
been handled.
saga, it's made
It's
him, yeah, it's made him
Yeah, and
like
and
upset.
rightfully so. If I'm
Yeah,
Jacob Markstrom, I mean he's having close to a Vezina year, at least in a conversation for it. And the way he's been talking about is he's like, I'm an exposable guy, and he most certainly is not. Going back to Linus Olmark, spending some of this year injured, I think we've kind of forgotten about just how insane his 2022-23 was. You know, I mean the guy just cruised to a Vezina, winning games that should not have been should not have been winning that many games. Let's just put it at that. 40 in what 49 last year. That's unheard of. That is absolutely unheard of. And the New Jersey Devils would be absolutely lucky to have him now, with him being 30 years old. That's for a goaltender. That's your prime. 30, you've hit 30, you've hit your stride, you've gotten experience at the NHL level, and you have an expectation now of this is how you play. You're going to play like this every year. Perhaps if you have a career year like 40 wins and 49 games, no one's expecting that much. But his numbers before that were also to the level of league average or slightly above. And he made a big jump. And, when he has featured this year, he's been very good. He's worth $5 million for another year. I think that price is going to go up. And I
definitely
think
gonna
that,
go.
I think for that reason, he's not going to be a Boston Bruin. So the Devils, could they have money this offseason? It appears like they might. Should that be something that they try to get ahead of before he hits the free agency market and a lot of teams try to get his signature? I would say so, but I don't think it'd be worth doing before the deadline. I don't think that deal would ever get done, and I don't think Linus Ullmark would want to do that. I don't think the Boston Bruins would want to do that, and I think that would be a waste for the New Jersey Devils to try to do that before they get the chance to renegotiate a contract, perhaps this offseason, because then you have a full off season to either negotiate or perhaps take a season and see how good the team actually is with an elite goaltender. But to me, Olmark is more interesting than Markstrom because he's a bit younger, and because there is real potential to build the team around him more so than Markstrom, in my opinion. Because, well, how good have the Calgary Flames been, even with him being as good as he's been? How good were the Vancouver Canucks when he was their goaltender? I mean, perhaps there's a reunite between Travis Green and Jacob Markstrom if you want to get super romantic about it. But I I don't I that's sort of where I'm at on Olmark. I'm a little bit more bullish about the Devils' chances to get him in the summer of 2024, more so than getting him this week or getting Markstrom this week. Obviously, Markstrom's going to hit free agency and is going to be a hot commodity for the entire league. Uh, I think Olmark perhaps has a little bit less pressure, being that he's on a team with two star goaltenders. So I hope, like, I mean, there's other names too. These aren't the only goalies that are out there. Jussi Saros, his name is still being floated around like crazy. But Olmark is the one that's kind of picked up some traction as of late. And yeah, I think I would lean in that direction over those three. Would you agree?
So my opinion is Allmark would be an off-season acquisition if they went
Right.
that route, just because, you can't really disrupt what they've got going on over there. Boston's not going to do that during the season.
Hell no.
There's no reason to do that. Um, Personally, you would have if you got Markstrom, you would have 2 more years after this year, right? And
Hmm.
then if you get a trade done, there's probably going to be retention in there. Depending on how much they can get retained, it could be down to 5 million or it could be down to 4 million in between there. I don't know. Just because we know we have decent prospects and goalies, maybe bringing in Markstrom as a better option just because you bring him in. He's playing elite right now, and it helps you right now. And then it also gives you time to let those kids develop even more, let them just get more games under their belt, see what Markstrom has because I mean he's a great guy first of all, and he's a great goalie. So having Nico Dawes or Akira Schmid behind them, learning from Markstrom, kind of helps them going forward. And then once his contract's up, you could either bring him back. He'll be 36 or 37 at that time. We know goalies can still play when they're old. Obviously, Marty Brodeur was just a revelation. I'm
The
not
GOAT.
expecting him. I'm not expecting Markstrom to play until he's 42, 43. But 37 is not that old for a goalie, especially if they don't get seriously injured when they're in their
Look at
mid
Johnny
to late
Quick right
30s.
now.
Exactly. And he's had major injuries, and he's come back to this type of level. So maybe bringing in Markstrom costs less because he's younger, but we'll see. I would probably say Markstrom for me right now, just because I know how they've played in Calgary kind of fits more with how the Devils have played right now. He makes a lot of high danger saves. So I know in Boston they're much more defensively sound, and that kind of helps their goalies out. So you never know with Linus Ullmark coming over here if he could get exposed. Like I remember the Ryan Miller trade when he went from Buffalo to St. Louis. Same thing. They were really good in front of him. Buffalo, he went to St. Louis, and St. Louis gave up a lot of breakaways, a lot of high danger stuff all the time, and he wasn't the same. So personally, I'd probably go after Markstrom.
Well, I'm gonna extend this trade conversation now a bit wider, not just talking about the Devils, not just talking about goalies. I will talk about a former Devil though, and one that we perhaps
Oh
thought,
wait. Before we get onto that, let's just bring up Toffoli real quick if we
oh,
want to
please, yes,
keep
sorry.
keep yeah.
Go ahead.
So the real question is, are the Devils going to re-sign Toffoli? And now, me personally, if you can't get a deal done before the deadline, you have to trade him because you can't just lose him for free. Um, I'd say a projected deal would be like what the Rangers did with St. Louis last year for Tarasenko, a first and a prospect type deal. And if you can't get to fully resign, I'll take that first round pick, and you're able to parlay that into another trade, like a Markstrom deal in the summer or at the deadline, something like that. I mean, personally, that's what I would do right now. Especially, we all want to think the Devils are still in this race, but it's gonna be really hard to make the playoffs. And
They're not gonna do it, man.
if Toffoli's not re-signed before the deadline, I don't think that risk is worth taking that you can say, you know what, we're eventually going to get a deal done. Toffoli, like, he's going to get a raise, and it's going to be for 4 to 6 years. And apparently the difference is between him, Toffoli, and Fitzgerald is the term. And I know Toffoli's probably going to want like 6 or 7 years. And I don't know if I'm ready to do that. I mean, we've already got Andre Palat on the roster at 6 million. I know Toffoli's probably a better player right now than Andre Palat, but having two of those type of players at that age in where they're making $6 million plus, I just don't know if it's worth it. So personally, for me, go get the first round pick and a prospect and use those assets to retool the team and make it better than it is right now.
I'm glad you brought
What
up
about
Palat actually, because in Toffoli is kind of a one-trick pony. I don't mean that to belittle him. He's a
He's
scoring
a goal
winger.
scorer. Yeah, he's a goal scorer.
He's
He
a
doesn't do
scoring
any
winger, and
doesn't
he's
really do
not
much
much
else.
else.
Yeah.
Andre Palat can score goals, but he's also really solid in the defensive zone, really solid in the neutral zone, and is honestly an underrated playmaker. Has he lived up to the $6 million a year value that the Devils are paying him? No, but I think that contract was made with the expectation that he really wasn't going to live up to that contract. And that was sort of, this is a guy we need to have around this team in order to be successful because otherwise it'd just be a lot of guys who, albeit are all talented, maybe a lot are young, but no one had ever come from a winning team before. So I
Yeah.
think Andre Palat was absolutely necessary and still is. He wears the A for a reason, and I think he deserves it. But Tyler Toffoli is a one-trick pony in a way that not many other Devils are. They don't have another scoring winger like him. They have Jesper Bratt, who's a playmaker. They have Timo Meyer, who's a power forward who does score a lot of goals, but can also be there to set up plays. Nico Hischier is your two-way talisman who can do everything you ask. And Andre Palat's kind of a lesser version of Nico in that regard. So for me, I think Tyler Toffoli is a player that is super valuable, even to up to the age of if they got 5 year deal to 37. He's not going to be as valuable as the 37-year-old goaltender might be, but I think that like that's the type of guy that the Devils need to have around a Jack Hughes, need to have around a Jesper Bratt. Do I think that it would be worth it if they don't figure out the term before the deadline? I'm with you. No, but I'm going to be sad to see a guy like Toffoli go because I
Oh, I'd
think
be sad. I'd be
like
sad, but
that was
yeah.
such a good trade last year, really, to get Sharon Govich and Toffoli essentially one for one. And I'm super happy to see how good Cher has been in Calgary, and the fact that they're arguably in a better position to make the playoffs than the Devils is astonishing to me. But that is the way that this works right now. So I think we're gonna find out a lot about Tyler Toffoli at the end of this week. I still think that
Yeah.
saga is going to take us into the offseason, provided he doesn't get traded. I think the Devils are going to try to make him stay in New Jersey should that move not happen, regardless. Do I think that would be the right thing? Well, it depends on how much that contract costs, and we will see. But one name that I wanted to mention is because it's one that I said was going to be on the trade block for his respective team the entire season, and that if push came to shove and the Devils needed another depth forward, that they go after and they tell Nathan Bastian first and foremost, hey, get ready to pick a new number, kid. And they go after Adam Henrique. Well, that ship has sailed, sadly, because Adam Henrique is now an Edmonton Oiler, and that makes me really upset. At least he's not
Yeah,
a
I'm so
Ranger.
I'm happy. He's not a Ranger and he's going to a place that, hey, to be fair, they might be in a cup final. So
Well, they're gonna
Adam
have to go
Henry,
through without the Pacific Division.
go get that cup, Henry. Go get that cup, man.
Hey, he should have got one in 2012. He deserved one in
Yeah,
2012.
definitely.
Couple of series winners in that magical playoff run.
What a beautiful run.
And here we are 12 years later, and we're still romanticizing about 2012, Daniel. You know,
Yeah.
we thought we
Other
thought that those days were over, that we could look forward to some new times, but we're still back thinking about 2012 and Adam Henrique.
Yeah.
Ah, man.
But other than Henrique, I mean, a couple other trades that have happened around the league. Colorado active today.
Yeah. Oh
I
yeah.
mean, they got Sean Walker and Casey Middlestat in. They got rid of dead weight and Ryan Johansson and a first to Philly. So Philly's gonna have another extra first round pick to help their rebuild. And Bowen Byram going the other way to Buffalo. I mean,
That
just
was a
look at that.
shocker to me.
I wouldn't say it's much of a shocker. Like, yes, Bowen Byram's a great talent, but for Colorado's needs,
Right.
getting Casey
Yeah. This is
Middlestat
good
and
business.
great one for one. You don't see many one for ones with these type of players. And now you just look at Buffalo's left side. I mean, their left side is stacked. The question is who's going to play on the right side of the fence? Because I mean, what you have Darlene on the left, Owen Power on the left, and now Bowen Byram on the left. You got the right
That's pretty
side.
tasty.
Then, but I mean, that's a great left side. I can't lie, great left side. And then Vladimir Tarasenko gets traded down to
To
Florida
Yeah, that's a great
with
move.
his with
Unbelievably
his
good move.
full with it, and that's how you use a no trade clause. You can use it wherever you pick your destination and you'll get there. And now he teams up with his boy what's his name, Bobrovsky.
Hmm.
So
I didn't even put
I
that together.
I think I really think we might see Edmonton, Florida, Cup final.
Edmonton, Florida. Ooh, I don't know if Edmonton have this team to get by Vancouver in a 7 game series, man. The Vancouver offense they just play such a good, well-rounded game that I'm like, you tell me Stuart Skinner's going to keep the puck out of the net?
I know what you're saying, but I
But
don't
they've
I don't
they've
even
played
I
good
don't
team
even
defense.
know. Yeah, I gotta see Vancouver in the playoffs first because obviously this will be their first year with all these nucleus kind of players all together in the playoffs. And Edmonton's been there before, man. They've made strides each year. Obviously, they lost to Vegas last year, the eventual Cup winners. So they've been getting beat in the playoffs, and motto always is you got to lose before you win in the playoffs. So maybe this could
True.
be Edmonton's year. So watch out for Connor McDavid, man. It's Connor McDavid. He could carry his team to the Cup Finals.
Yeah, I mean, it remains to be seen. He hasn't done it yet, but I mean, he could totally do it. I think they're going to end up playing Vegas in the first round. I know they're.
Yeah,
I think the standings have it.
that's what it looks like.
Kings are
Yeah.
ahead of Vegas, but the the Golden Knights, for my money, are still when they have their whole roster and they're playing their game. I know they've had a rough go of it over the last couple of weeks, but
Yeah.
I don't think there's a team better than them in this league when they're playing their best hockey. But again, we're still so far removed from the playoffs, even though we kind of have a pretty clear picture of, especially in the West, of which teams are going to be in the playoffs. There's nothing guaranteed at this juncture.
No.
Um, Although it's looking more and more guaranteed that the Devils won't be there. I know we spent quite a bit of time talking about some things going on outside of the league, but let's bring it back home.
Yep.
One final parting message for this week's episode about the Devils. Dan, you go first. If something you want to say about Lindy Ruff, Alex Holtz, Nemec, whatever it may be, trades, Toffoli, Markstrom, have at it, and then we're gonna say goodbye.
Yeah, actually, I want to bring this up because I've seen a lot of it, and because obviously it's success out in Calgary now, but I make that trade 100 times out of 100 times. I
Toffoli
think
for
people
Sharangovich.
to Foley for Sharon Govich.
Me
I
too.
mean, there's a lot of revisionist history because if we don't make that trade, what? Sharon Govich is playing third line winger for this team like he was last year.
Hmm.
This season in Calgary, he's playing first line center with Jonathan Huberdeau on his wing. Just think about that. He's playing with much more responsibility. He's playing with better players on his wing, and he has all the freedom in the world up in Calgary to play his game that we all saw. We all knew his potential. It
And
just was
everyone's rooting
never
for him.
it just was never gonna happen here in New Jersey. So I still make that trade. We still needed a pure goal scorer on the wing, and we got that. It's been a win-win. Obviously,
He
the
scored what?
Devils.
Toffoli's got 24 goals.
He's got 26 goals. Like he's
26?
on
All right,
pace.
there you go.
Yeah, he's on pace for another 30 goals season. Like we needed that type of trade. We needed that type of player, and I'm just here to say I still do that trade because we all know what Sharangovich could have been, his potential, but he just never was going to get that in New Jersey. And I'm glad he's doing it on Calgary because we love you, Share. Keep doing it, and you're eventually gonna get back to the playoffs. Maybe even this year you'll get to the playoffs. You'll be in the playoffs, and the Devils won't. But we're still
So
rooting for
sad.
you, kid. Wait, we're still rooting for you. That's all I'm saying.
And I'll leave with this. In a similar sense, looking back on the offseason, and I said the Devils, don't need to go for a goaltender because Vitek Vanacek had the year he had last year. And
Ugh.
obviously, with the privilege of hindsight, I would take that back. But I'm going to pretend like I don't have that privilege, and I'm going to think back to what I said. And knowing what I knew, I'm going to stand by it. Vitek Vanacek had 33 wins last year. No Devils goaltender not named Marty Brodeur was able to win more than 30 games. And I know it's the same thing in the NFL, right? Or wins a quarterback stat or wins a goalie stat? Not exactly, you know, but there's a reason why Pat Mahomes has won a lot of games. There's a reason why Marty Brodeur won 691 games. There's a reason why he's played more games than any other goaltender. You
Yeah.
trust your guns when they win. And I think for the Devils to have made a move for a big goaltender in this offseason and said, okay, Vitek, you did your job. You won us 33 games. Go back to being a split time starter with whatever team they traded him to. Then I think that maybe that changes the dynamic of the team too much here or there. And I don't know if having Connor Hellebuck would mean that this team is a playoff team. They certainly would be better, certainly would be getting more timely saves. But for the entire season, we've been saying a lot of, well, if the Devils just had a good goaltender, they'd be in better shape. And they would be in better shape. But this team in front of them has not been good enough. I don't care if the goaltender was a prime Marty Brodeur. this team would have struggled a lot. I'm not sure if they would be a playoff team or not, but they would have struggled. They would have taken big steps back from last year and they would have regressed with Vitek Vanacek or with Martin Brodeur. I don't care who the goaltender was. That would have happened.
Yeah.
Now, of course, I'd rather have Connor Hellebuck. And going back to the offseason, I probably, having known what I know now, probably would have said, yeah, let's break the bank for a goaltender. Let's do it. Let's buy in because we're going to need to eventually, and let's figure it out before it gets too late. But I think that this is perhaps what had to happen. You know, you overachieve, you underachieve, and then you achieve. And I think the Devils perhaps overachieved a bit last year, getting to the second round of the playoffs and being as good as they were consistently in the regular season. And I think they took massive steps back this year, but they had to in order to figure out what it takes to be a cup contender. Because as good as they were last year, they weren't a cup contender. They were on the just on the brink, and now they're very far from that. So I know that's a pretty negative way to end the episode.
Let me just chime in on that.
Oh,
I
if maybe if it's more positive.
totally agree with you. I
Yeah.
mean, just we can. Someone brought this up. I don't know who it was, but people forget Vegas missed the playoffs before they won the cup last year.
Yep. Yes, they did.
Again, as I've always said, you gotta lose before you win. The Devils had a great season. They got the taste of winning. And you know what? Maybe this season, losing, getting that awful taste back in your mouth, just motivates them even more going into next season if they miss the playoffs. Because imagine just having all that success, breaking all these team records, coming into the season and you just fall flat on your face. There's gonna be a lot of players on this team going into the offseason like, hell no, this ain't happening ever again. This is never happening again. We are going to be the best versions of ourselves, and it starts right now. So hopefully we can hope that that's the mindset if they miss the playoffs, which is, that's the most likely scenario right now. So maybe we can be our own Vegas of the East, and next year we somehow win the cup, and we don't talk about this year ever again. So back to you, James. That's more
Hopefully we never
positive.
we never
That,
talk
that
about
that's a positive spin to that.
that's
So
a good way to and I think that's where we can call it. So yeah, I mean big week coming up. We're gonna learn more by the trade deadline on Friday. Hopefully this entire episode doesn't become out of date by then and we get a few good days where you could listen to it and enjoy it. But for all of us here at Puck on the Parkway, where it's just really two of us now, Daniel Rebane and James Burley, thank you guys so much for joining us. Hopefully, the Devils can figure something out over these next 20 games, and if not, can take the summer to really look at things hard. Travis Green is at the helm. Lindy Ruff is gone. So much is going on. Thank you guys so much for listening. Try and keep up with the news if you can't. Listen back to the episode. But for Dan, for myself, thank you guys so much for listening. We will see you guys next time on Puck on the Parkway.
let's go Devils.